Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter and I am the curator I'm not the curator for that curator. I'm the Digital Humanities Curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. And in the SIMS, as we call the Schoenberg Institute, we are a research and development institute focusing on manuscript studies, broadly defined. And we digitize all of our manuscripts. So if you are interested in today's manuscript, you can follow the link to the record that we'll be putting in the chat, and you can see high resolution images of every page. And once a week, for Coffee with a Codex, I bring out one of our manuscripts and just sort of do a show and tell for 30 minutes. It's very low key and informal. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be keeping my eye on the chat, and my colleague Amy Hutchins, who is our manuscripts cataloger, will also be keeping her eye on the chat. Without further ado, we will turn to today's manuscript, which is, the shelf mark is CAJS Rar 166. It's from the CAJS Center for Judaica Studies, and they have their own collection of manuscripts downtown, so I got this shipped over especially for us. It is a copy of the Pentateuch and the Pentateuch and the historic books of the Bible in Arabic, which is pretty interesting. And it's got some beautiful headers, which I have marked and which we'll be looking at. It was written in Egypt around 1760, we think, so end of the sort of last half of the 18th century. And it was written for a Jewish population that was there, Arabic-speaking Jewish population in Egypt. So that is the context of this book. It is in a binding, which is, I don't know of the timing for the binding. I don't know if it's the original binding that the book was in. The binding is a typical Middle Eastern binding. We call it type 2. Type 2 has a flap. So if you see, I open up the cover and there's this flap that then comes out. And what this does is it kind of makes a little book. It turns the binding, a little box. It makes a little box for the book to keep it all safe. And so we open that up. I think at one time it must have been a very nice looking binding. It has seen a lot of wear. It is leather over board, not wooden boards, but like some kind of thick cardboard. And you can see, because of the damage, you can actually see some of the binding remnants inside. So if we zoom in a little bit here, we can see that there's a kind of a thin fabric lining there, and then these are the threads that hold the binding that sort of are sewn actually in the spine and then hold the book, the text block is what we call this part of the book, onto the rest of the binding. So you get a little view of how the binding works. Something else that I'll probably point this out as we go through several times. If you can see these little X's here, these thread X's, and Amy, you might know more than I do about these. I don't know how much you know about book binding, but what I noticed is that in this book, rather than, so George is asking me to pin the book view. I think the book view is spotlighted. So if you can't see the book, I cannot help you because I have spotlighted it. So hopefully, maybe if you click on it, you can make it bigger in your screen. So the books that I usually work with, I will admit that my expertise is in Western medieval manuscripts. Usually the way books are made is you have, I'm going to use, these aren't great, but let's imagine we have sheets of paper or parchment, and then you fold them like this to make pages. So now I have 4 little pages, and then when I sew them together, you sew these together, you sew them right through. So you have like a needle, and you poke it right through, and you make the thread right down the middle. What this book does instead is it is sewn sort of through the edge of the fold of the quire. So it's sewn here instead of here. And it's sewn specifically with this sort of X pattern, which this is just neat for me because I haven't seen this before. I think this is really interesting. And I, unfortunately, since I don't know that much about Egyptian book practices at this time, I don't want to assume that this is the way that they sewed the books or if this is something kind of unique, but I thought that was neat. But you guys want to see it, so let's take a look inside here. The first thing that we see is not actually any biblical text. We've got this sort of little drawing of something or someone. I don't think that the record says anything about this, but it is this a drawing by a child who got their hands on it? I don't know. There is at least one other drawing in the manuscript, which looks very similar to this, and we'll point that out. So we can sort of think about this. So this is an interesting thing that's been added afterward. But then we turn one more page, and we get to the main text. So you can see it's written in Arabic, and this is Genesis, the opening of Genesis. And every book has this sort of delightful opening. And what we have is a decorative feature at the top, and then a few words. So this is actually writing that is in a very sort of, what's a good word for this, sort of stylized way. And if I zoom in, I'm not entirely sure what exactly is going on, but we've got eyes. You're going to see some, not all of these have little eyes, but these have little eyes and what almost look like hands or birds. It's a little bit hard to tell if that's just me sort of looking at that and saying, well, that looks like a hand or that looks like an eye, but a neat little stylized thing. And then we have another header and then the text coming after it. So Kate Barber in the chat says the drawing looks similar to those in incantation bowls. And Linda is talking about evil eye. I don't know like what the context is for these. Kate says hands and eyes are for protection. So that very well might be what this is. I don't know for sure, but I love that idea. So the text itself is in Arabic. The script is a Naskh script, which is the sort of most common written script that you see of Arabic in the Middle East. And it is, in addition to the writing, you're going to see little marks above, and some of them are in red. And this is marks for pointing and vocalization. And I don't know very much about Arabic to tell you what that is, but I know that it's to sort of help with reading out loud, I think, comprehension. So that is the first page. And Kadi says, has sent me a direct message to me. The first word on the right is Allah, which makes sense. So when you say the first word on the right, in which one? In the decoration or in this one? Because there are lots of words on the right. So I'm not surprised that Allah is there. Okay. In the bottom color bar. Okay, Allah. So we move on, and you'll see the cover we saw has seen a lot, and the pages that have too. It gets a little bit less messy the further we get in, but you can see there's been some work that was done. It looks like some damage to the leaf, and so there was backing sort of pasted in. And it won't open very wide, so I have to hold it up here. And here we are, and between every choir, we're going to be seeing this sort of X sewing. You can really see it here. So every choir seems to be sewn like that. Now I did put in bookmarks because I wanted to make sure that we'd be able to see every one of these headings. I'm a little confused because if it's the Pentateuch and then there's the 6, I think I counted 6 historical books. I thought, well, there will be 11 headers, right? Because 5 plus 6 is 11. There are actually 13 headers. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So I assume that was Genesis, and then I assume that this one is Exodus, but I'm not entirely sure there. So I want to point out, here is the ending of Genesis, and the way that it ends is a very typical sort of chapter method for chapter ending, not only for biblical texts, but for we have manuscripts that are all sorts of topics, a lot of scientific topics in our collection, and sort of a narrowing at the end is a very common way to end. And then it looks like looks to me like a slightly different style of writing. So I don't know if this is a note somebody added later. There's also one up here. So that's sort of perhaps a sign of somebody leaving a note a little bit later. Then we have another header. It's a little bit different. We still have one of these little hand things there. The decoration of the header is similar but not identical to the first one, so it does look like there's some variant there. And then we're lacking the Genesis had the writing in red, and this just goes right into the main text. Okay, George is saying 13 are likely 5 books of the Old Testament, and then plus the 8 books of the prophets. Okay, so it could be 8 books instead of the 6 books. So that would explain the number of headers. Oop. So I think that someone was asking about, right, Claire, can we see how the choirs are connected at the spine? That's going to be really hard to see because the spine itself isn't visible. The spine is covered. So we can sort of see, I can get close and you can see the sewing, but it's really hard, and I don't want to pull it too much to see what it is, but there's some kind of, obviously there's some kind of connection happening. And remember, there are also the thick threads that I pointed out that are connected to the boards, and so they'll be sewn onto those. I'm sorry I can't show you more of that. Here is, we'll probably see more of this too, a note written vertically, and something there as well. I have a question, a private question. What is the type of colored ink or process for coloration? The short answer is I don't know. I was talking to someone earlier this week about inks, and I think a lot of it depended on what was available locally. So, you know, there's dark and there's red. The the paint, I'm going to call it paint, whatever the pigments that's being used in these, I think it's not the same as the ink that's being used in the writing. This is, I'm going to move it a little bit, maybe you can see it's shiny in a way that the ink of the writing is not shiny. So I think, although the coloring is similar, it's a different, either it's different pigment or it has, it's pigment mixed with something else that makes it shiny. The only way that we would know for sure would be to do some kind of scientific analysis on it, and that could involve taking samples of it, which we would probably be hesitant to do because that would mean scraping some of the ink off. Or I think there are also light. You can do analysis of different wavelengths of light because different things reflect wavelengths of light in different ways. I know very little about that. That's the extent of my knowledge. We just haven't really had the opportunity to do this. Jan is suggesting gum arabic mixed in with the pigments, which I think that would maybe account for the shininess, right? That would be what gum arabic would be. There are more hand eyes here, some kind of nice ones. I like, I don't know, I think these are really fun. I'm enjoying getting to see every one of them there. All right, let's keep moving. At some point, we're going to start seeing something else in the margin that I didn't know what it was, but maybe someone else will. Not quite yet, though. Here we go. I was talking about this one earlier. This is Numbers, if we're still going in the right order. This is going to be the start of Numbers. And I'm not entirely sure what this is for, but what has happened is there's writing, because I can see there are some letters that are peeking out from here, and there's some letters here, and a piece of paper was pasted over it to cover whatever was here. And something else, something, obviously there's writing here, something, and then this little person was drawn here. This could be a, from, I think it's Leviticus was the previous one, so it could be an illustration, for something. It looks like there are birds. And one thing I noticed that's sort of interesting is that this was drawn after the paper was placed there, because the guy's feet are on the original page. So the paper ends here and the feet are here. So this was drawn, so the paper was put down, this was drawn, and then that was written in that order, or something. At least we know the paper was put, and then this was drawn. So if anyone has thoughts about what that might be, I would love to hear them. And also whether this was drawn by an adult or a younger person. We have a few manuscripts in our collection that have children's drawings in them, and apparently there are, the way that the drawings are ratio, like the ratio between legs and body and head can sort of help you know if it was drawn by a child or an adult. So, but that's just sort of interesting. I'm not sure what's happening there. And then, of course, we have our header over here. We have even more. I don't know if it's my imagination. We seem to be getting more of eyes and hands, and the pigment color here is a little bit different. I don't know if you can tell over the camera, but this is almost burgundy, and I feel like mostly it's been sort of that orangey red and black, and now there's a sort of a different shade if you can see, it's not quite black, it's pretty dark. So there's that, and we'll keep going. Ooh, here we go. More of these X, and one of the results of this, the way that they've sewn it, is that it's a little bit difficult to open inside a choir because there's not as much of a gutter for you to sort of pull on. So the book is tending to want to like open, oh, here we are in the middle of a choir. And I don't know if you can see that. We can see the thread down the middle of the gutter here. So it is being sewn in the gutter as well as being sewn in the X's on the outside. I'm really curious about this style. Let's see, what's next? This should be Deuteronomy, and there's more of the sort of dark red. Again, more of this, it almost looks like a floor or a carpet, I don't know. And then again, the stylized writing with the eyes and the hands. And we're in the middle of a choir too, so there's thread that you can maybe see over here, or over here on the side. There's some thread there. This is, I don't know if I said it, this is written on paper. Oh, okay. So George, I think this is in reference to the picture that we had up. 2 birds are seated atop the Ark of the Covenant. Oh, yeah. They could also be cherubs, not birds, but angelic creatures. Oh, okay. I like the idea of the Ark. That could work. All right. Let's see. And here is Joshua. Here we go. So there's some more notes on the edge. Jan, looks like they sewed as separate signatures. So they did. They sewed them separately, and then bound them together. Maybe they were meant to be separate. I don't know, but there are so many of them. So this is Joshua, and I'm not sure why this piece of paper is here. There we go. Okay. If I'm right, and I counted right, this should be Joshua. We have over here another one of these endings, some more. This looks similar to me to the writing actually that was on the pasted paper too. So someone else's hand coming through here, which is pretty neat. So this is a little different. We still have the sort of carpet style there, and then we have a line. We're back to, we've got yellow and red and black. We don't have that dark red. And then we haven't seen this before, I think. The writing that has the color inside it, the black and the red and the yellow, and then another one of these that has more hands and ear and eyes. That is really neat. There we go. So we have a question. What is the place of origin of this codex? Yes, it's Egypt. Is what the record. That's what the record says. 1760 is the date. I'm not entirely sure where. That determination was not made by me. Okay, so it was, but at some point somebody determined that. So this is where we start getting these notes in the margin, and I think that at least for a while, they're on every page, and I don't know what these are. If anyone else knows, they could be numbers. I but it's interesting that all of a sudden they show up in Joshua, and they sort of stick around. So I don't know if they're a numbering system or what exactly is happening, because they continue. Oh, this is nice. Here's the ending of the previous page. We've even got some little decorations around that. So this is Judges, again, if my numbering is right. And we have more of this. And again, this is a little bit different than we've seen it before. This pattern, it's a similar pattern, but not exactly the same, which is, I like to imagine at least that the artist has some leeway to sort of do something a little bit different each time, so they don't get tired of it. You see similar things in Western manuscripts, where artists get to draw little, bunnies in the margins and things when they're done with their hard work. All right. Oh, 2 minutes. So I'll make sure that we get to see the rest of these. So here is one more heading with the eyes and that. And still with the marks in the side margins too. So this is a short, whatever this book is, it's very short because it's only a few pages to the next one. I think I got off because I'm not sure if this is Ruth or not. There's some staining, it looks like, here. Some kind of red staining. Maybe there was I don't know. And also up here, a little messy. But again, now it's small. Before it was all big pieces, and now it's small pieces. Okay, one more. Oh, and another variant in that carpet design, and a couple more little hands off in the sides, which are neat. I don't know if I mentioned that this is on paper, which you'd expect it to be. If you asked me, would this be on paper, I say yes. But just in case you were wondering, it's all on paper. And kings, I think. Just one little eye right there. I think there's just the one. And, come on. Here we are. This is going to be the last one. So one more little eye with a hand for you, and there we go. It is 12:30. Thank you all so much, especially if for those of you who may have registered for this last year and have been waiting. I'm so sorry that it's taken so long, but I'm really glad that we finally got to see this, and it's digitized. So if you want to go back and see all of the images, you can do that. And I'm going to put the video up probably later today. So if you want to watch it again, you may do that. So thank you all so much, and hopefully I'll see you again later.